Hey guys, tonight we're diving into the entire story of ancient China, where rivers run like veins of fate and empires rise from mud, only to sink back into whispers. Did you know that over 5,000 years ago, one river alone drowned millions in floods that reshaped civilizations, turning fertile plains into graveyards overnight? What if the very water that gave life was also a silent killer, coiling around your ankles like a promise of doom? And how many secrets does that silt still hold? Buried under layers of forgotten bones, imagine standing at the edge of history's cradle, where the Yellow River's sorrowful bends birthed a culture that outlasted empires. Could you survive its treacherous embrace, or would you become just another ghost in its flow? So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. Let me know where you're watching from and what time it is where you are. I love seeing how far this sleepy little time machine reaches. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wade through the Yellow River's muddy grip, your skin prickling from the chill as the water surges around your thighs, thick with silt that clings to your legs like forgotten regrets, pulling at you with a deceptive gentleness that masks its ancient fury. The current tugs insistently, cold fingers wrapping around your calves, and you feel the weight of it, all the river's breath, heavy with the scent of wet earth and decayed vegetation, filling your lungs like a warning from the depths. It's not just water, it's the lifeblood of what will become China, this Yellow River, often called the Sorrow for its devastating floods that have claimed untold lives over millennia, depositing nutrient-rich loess soil that turns barren plains into fertile cradles, yet in a cruel twist, sweeping away villages in raging torrents that leave behind only echoes of screams. You push forward, your feet sinking into the soft bottom, the mud squelching between your toes with a sound like muffled sighs, and you wonder how many have drowned here, their bodies folded into the sediment like secrets the earth refuses to yield. Historians still argue whether these floods were mere natural disasters or divine punishments, but as you struggle against the flow, it feels personal, like the river is testing you. Whispering through the ripples about the paradoxes, it birthed a sorrow that nurtures, a destroyer that creates. The air hangs heavy with mist, carrying the faint irony tang of iron-rich soil on your tongue, worse than biting into a rusty nail during a modern construction mishap. And you zoom out for a moment, seeing the vast basin stretching like a colossal scar across northern China, from the Tibetan plateau eastward to the sea, carving paths that would define migrations and settlements for generations. You feel the prickling chill mutate now, not just from the water, but from the realization that this isn't some serene stream, it's a beast that has shaped human destiny, forcing early settlers to adapt or perish, their rudimentary dams crumbling like today's failed infrastructure projects during hurricanes. An absurd tidbit bubbles up in your mind. The ancient people here used to divine weather patterns by observing river turtles. Their shells cracked under heat like primitive weather apps, far less reliable than your phone's forecast, but with that same nagging uncertainty, you press on, the silt building under your nails like gritty accusations, and the river's whisper grows louder, recounting how its floods deposited layers of fertile loess, wind-blown dust from distant deserts, creating soil so rich it supported the first agricultural communities around 10,000 years ago. Yet in ironic modern humour, it's like nature's version of a bad delivery service, dropping gifts that come with hidden fees of catastrophe. Your muscles ache from the resistance, a sensory struggle that mirrors the hardship of those Neolithic farmers who first tamed this land, planting millet in the north, where the semi-arid climate demanded drought-resistant crops. Their hands calloused from grinding stones into tools, bodies bent from endless labour under a sun that baked the earth into cracked mosaics. You imagine their quiet desperation, the filth of sweat-mixed mud caking their skin, much like a grueling hike gone wrong in today's national parks, but without the luxury of a rescue helicopter. The Yangtze River joins the narrative in your thoughts, flowing parallel in the south, its warmer, more humid basins fostering rice cultivation by the 7th millennium BCE, where communities like Hemadu developed wooden tools and irrigation systems that required collective effort, binding people in webs of cooperation that felt both empowering and suffocating, the steam from paddy fields rising like ghosts of exhaustion. You feel a shocking sadness creep in, empathizing with those early souls who transitioned from nomadic hunter-gatherers to settled villagers, their Paleolithic ancestors leaving behind stone tools and carved bones from 100,000 years ago. Evidence of controlled fire that warmed caves but couldn't fend off the isolation imposed by natural barriers, the Gobi Desert to the north, Himalayas to the west, Pacific to the east, all conspiring to shield this cradle from external influences, allowing a unique cultural identity to ferment in relative solitude. Zoom out again, and you see the land's diversity unfolding like a fractured mirror. Northern plains with their millet fields and animal husbandry. Central regions bursting with dense populations around urban centres. Southern territories with wet rice paddies yielding bountiful harvests but demanding backbreaking water management. The injustice of it all hitting you like a cold wave. Why should geography dictate such uneven fates? Much like modern urban-rural divides where some thrive while others toil endlessly. The recurring motif of wet wool, or rather, the sodden rags these ancients might have worn mutates here into the cling of river weeds against your legs, slimy and insistent, reminding you of resource distributions that fueled progress clay for pottery evolving from utilitarian vessels to ritual objects. Forests providing timber and tools, minerals like copper and tin birthing bronze metallurgy in the northeast, jade from western mountains valued more than gold for its spiritual aura. You stumble slightly, the water's pull intensifying, and sarcasm slips in nature's grand design. Like a cosmic prank where isolation breeds innovation but also paranoia. Selective adaptation absorbing foreign elements like Buddhism later on without letting them dominate. A pattern that feels eerily similar to today's cultural gatekeeping on social media. A factual moment grounds you archaeological sites like Banpo reveal permanent villages with defensive ditches and communal burials, showing early stratification where some graves hold jade while others lie bare. The pain of inequality as old as the river itself. You feel the filth of it now, mud seeping into every pore, a sensory hardship that deepens your empathy for those who built societies from this chaos, their populations swelling as agriculture surplus allowed specialization craftsmen, ritual leaders, warriors emerging from the masses. Yet the injustice lingers, slaves from debts or captures toiling at the bottom, their silent suffering a shocking undercurrent to progress. Historians debate whether this geographic cocoon truly fostered independence or merely delayed inevitable clashes. But as you fight the current, it feels like both blessing and curse, much like scrolling endlessly through apps that connect yet isolate. The river's whisper fades to a murmur, carrying hints of what's to come, the silt shifting underfoot like unstable ground, leaving you with a psychological chill how long before the next flood claims everything you've built. You hunch over flickering cave fires, the flames licking at your raw fingertips as you chip away at flint with a dull stone, sparks flying like fleeting stars in the oppressive darkness. But have you ever wondered how a simple hunger pang could forge the backbone of empires? When around 100,000 years ago, in these very Paleolithic shadows, your ancestors scraped by on whatever the wild offered, their bellies growling with an endless ache that makes today's skipped lunch feel like a minor inconvenience. The smoke stings your eyes, acrid and thick, curling into your nostrils with the scent of charred bone and damp earth, mutating that chill from the river's edge into a dry, throat-scratching heat that clings to your skin like an unwelcome shroud, while the cave's walls pressing close, their rough texture grazing your elbows as you work, fingers bleeding from the repetitive strikes that shape crude hand axes and scrapers, tools born from necessity in a world where survival hangs on the edge of a sharpened stone. You feel the gnawing hunger deep in your gut, a sensory struggle that twists like a living thing, ribs protruding under your taut skin as you imagine scavenging for roots and berries in the unforgiving scrub outside. The bitterness of half-ripe fruit on your tongue, a sad reminder that abundance is a myth here. Much like chasing a fad diet in the modern world, where apps promise fullness but deliver only emptiness. Ironic, isn't it? How we've traded primal starvation for self-imposed fasts. A factual moment settles in as you pause to blow on the embers. The fire's glow illuminating scattered bone fragments etched with simple lines. Early artistic expressions from sites like those in the Jokudian caves near modern Beijing, where Homo erectus left evidence of controlled fire use around 700,000 years ago, warming bodies against the biting cold that seeped through every crack. Yet historians still debate whether these markings were deliberate art or mere idle scratches, an uncertainty that echoes the blurred line between creation and chaos in human beginnings. Your muscles throb from the effort, arms heavy as you test the edge of your new tool against a piece of hide, the leathery resistance giving way with a satisfying tear. But the shocking element hits when you realize how fragile life was, infant mortality soaring from malnutrition, wounds festering without medicine, a deep empathy welling up for those who huddled here. Families clustered for warmth, their laughter faint against the wind's howl outside, only to lose loved ones to predators lurking in the shadows. Sadder than any ghost story because it's etched in the fossil record. You zoom out poetically, the cave expanding in your mind to encompass the vast Yellow River basin, where seasonal migrations followed game herds across plains that shifted with the winds. A lyrical dance of endurance where humans adapted or vanished like mist at dawn. An absurd tidbit crosses your thoughts as you gnaw on a tough strip of dried meat. These early folk sometimes used animal bladders as water carriers, inflated and sealed with resin, a primitive canteen that could burst at the wrong moment, spilling precious liquid like a cruel joke from nature. Far worse than a leaky thermos on a hiking trip today where you can just buy another at the store. Sarcasm creeps in as you stoke the fire, muttering to yourself about how romantic cave life sounds in movies. But the reality is filth ground into every pore. Insects crawling across your legs in the dim light, mutating that silt cling from the river into a gritty layer of ash and sweat that itches relentlessly. A constant irritation that forces you to scratch until skin breaks, blood mixing with the dirt in tiny rivulets. You share this space with others now. Shadowy figures emerging from the gloom, women grinding ochre for body paint, their hands stained red like permanent accusations, children playing with pebbles that clack softly against the stone floor, the empathy deepening as you see the division of labour taking shape, hunters venturing out into the cold dawn while gatherers forage, a system that's sustained but also chained, much like modern gender roles that pretend to evolve, yet echo these ancient patterns with sarcastic familiarity. The hunger gnaws fiercer as night deepens, your stomach contracting in painful spasms, and you recall how this persistent ache drove innovation the transition to the Neolithic around 10,000 years ago, when the last ice age thawed and warmer climates allowed experimentation with wild grains, leading to domestication of millet in the north's semi-arid zones, where you now envision yourself sowing seeds in shallow furrows, the earth cool and crumbly under your nails, a physical event that shifts your role from wanderer to settler, birthing fragile villages like Banpo with its circular huts and storage pits. You feel the injustice of it all, some thriving on surplus while others starve during lean winters, a shocking disparity that foreshadowed social hierarchies, sadder still when you think of the elderly left behind in migrations, their frail bodies succumbing to the cold that no fire could fully banish. Zoom out once more, and the landscape transforms lyrically from sparse grasslands to emerging fields dotted with permanent dwellings. Rivers now allies in irrigation rather than mere threats. A poetic widening where human will bend nature's whims, yet at the cost of endless toil. Sarcasm lightens the moment as you chuckle weakly. Imagine explaining to these folks that one day we'd have delivery apps bringing food to our doors, yet complain about wait times, while they fought tooth and nail for every calorie. The irony is sharp as your flint blade. An academic uncertainty lingers in the smoke. Did the Neolithic revolution hit China independently? Or were ideas carried on trade winds from the Fertile Crescent? A debate that historians fuel with pottery shards and pollen samples. But as you huddle closer to the flames, it matters little the result was villages swelling with population, specialized tools like polished axes easing the labor, though the pain of overwork etched lines into faces prematurely aged. You test a new bone needle, pricking your thumb accidentally, a drop of blood welling up to mix with the ash, mutating the sensory motif into something more intimate. The metallic taste on your lips when you suck the wound, reminiscent of iron tools yet to come but hinting at the blood price of progress. The fire crackles softly, casting dancing shadows that play tricks on your weary eyes. Figures seeming to move in the corners where early art carved ivories and painted rocks tell stories of hunts and spirits. An absurd tidbit being how some used red ochre not just for decoration, but to ward off evil, like ancient makeup with supernatural SPF, far more practical than today's beauty filters that hide rather than protect. Your empathy surges for the women birthing children in these dim confines, the cries echoing off walls slick with condensation, their roles central yet undervalued in the emerging social weave, much like unsung heroes in modern startups who keep the lights on while CEOs take the glory. The hunger subsides slightly as you share a meagre handful of roasted tubers, the starchy sweetness a brief reprieve, but the filth returns, ground into your palms from handling fire-scorched stones. A constant reminder that cleanliness was a luxury unborn. As the flames die down to embers, you curl into a fetal position on the hard floor, the cold seeping back through the cave mouth like an old enemy, mutating the warmth into fleeting comfort, and you ponder the slow dawn of agriculture that would change everything rice in southern wetlands demanding communal labour for paddies, the injustice of it binding communities in sweat-soaked solidarity, sadder when floods erased months of work in hours. A psychological chill settles as sleep approaches, the darkness pressing in with questions of what fragile settlements will rise from this womb of earth, their foundations shaky as your trembling hands, leaving you adrift in the quiet terror of beginnings where every spark could ignite revolution or snuff out forever. The cave's echo fades to a hush, but a distant growl from outside hints at beasts prowling, pulling your thoughts toward the myths that will soon cloak these harsh realities in veils of legend. You kneel in ethereal mists before sage rulers, their forms shimmering like half-remembered dreams in the swirling fog that clings to your robes with a clammy insistence. But have you ever pondered how a single mythical invention could rewrite the stars? When legends claim the Yellow Emperor devised the compass over 4,000 years ago, guiding wanderers through chaos yet leaving historians to squabble over whether it was magnetic magic or mere folklore spun to justify divine rule. The mist seeps into your pores, cold and insidious, mutating the cave's dry ash from your previous huddles into a damp veil that weighs on your shoulders like invisible burdens, your knees grinding into the pebbled ground with a dull ache that spreads up your thighs, the texture rough and unyielding as if the earth itself resents your supplication. You bow low, forehead nearly touching the cool stone, the scent of incense bitter sandalwood mixed with wild herbs filling your nostrils and making your head swim, a sensory struggle that blurs the line between reverence and nausea, as if inhaling the very essence of power's intoxicating lie. Empathy surges through you for these early worshippers, gathered in makeshift shrines along riverbanks, their bodies marked by the filth of daily toil, yet souls elevated by tales of exemplary kings. The shocking element being how these stories masked harsh realities, famines that hollowed cheeks, floods that stole children turning suffering into moral parables, sadder than any forgotten fairy tale where heroes triumph without scars. A physical event unfolds as you rise slightly, the Yellow Emperor's gaze stern yet wise in your imagination fixing on you, his legendary inventions pressing like a crown of thorns, writing systems that captured thoughts on bamboo slips, mathematical calculations that mapped the heavens, even silk production from wriggling worms, an absurd tidbit where cocoons were boiled alive to unravel threads finer than spider silk, much like modern fast fashion's hidden cruelties where luxury comes from exploited labour overseas. Ironic how ancient elegance hid such boiling brutality. Your fingers twitch, imagining holding a primitive compass, its needle quivering uncertainly, the metallic tang faint on your tongue as if tasting iron's future promise, mutating that recurring motif from the cave's bone etchings into something more refined yet equally primal, a tool that pointed north but couldn't navigate the human heart's deceptions. Sarcasm slips in as you mutter under your breath. Meritocracy sounds noble, doesn't it? Like a corporate ladder where the best rise. But here it's the sweet lie that kings chose successors based on virtue, not blood. A clever commentary on how power always finds ways to bend rules, just like today's nepotism dressed as fair play. You shift your weight, knees protesting with sharp twinges, and the mist parts briefly to reveal Emperor Yao, his form towering in the haze, reportedly creating the first calendar from astronomical observations, stars wheeling overhead in patterns that dictated planting seasons and rituals. A factual moment where solar and lunar cycles align to prevent crop failures. Yet historians still argue whether these celestial maps were accurate science or astrological superstition, the uncertainty adding a layer of doubt that chills you deeper than the fog. Zoom out poetically, and the scene expands like an unfolding scroll. misty valleys giving way to star-strewn skies where constellations tell stories of harmony, shifting the tone from personal kneel to cosmic vastness, yet pulling you back with the injustice of it all. Yao's virtuous rule supposedly brought prosperity, but the pain of catastrophic floods he faced upstream echoes your river wade, millions displaced in legends that feel too real, their cries lost in the ether like unanswered prayers in a modern disaster zone where aid arrives too late. You feel the weight intensify as Emperor Shun appears beside him, his musical systems tied to ritual performances vibrating through the air, the faint hum of ancient strings plucking at your eardrums, mutating the iron tang into a melodic resonance that soothes yet unsettles. For these harmonies mastered administrative divisions he established, carving the land into regions that fostered order but sowed seeds of future fragmentation, much like drawing state lines today that promise unity but breed rivalries. A shocking sadness grips you as you recall Shun's selection by merit, chosen over Yao's own son for demonstrated virtue, the empathy raw for the rejected heir, cast aside in a system that preached fairness but inflicted familial wounds deeper than any blade. Sadder when you think of how this ideal rarely survived reality's grind. Your back aches from the prolonged bow, a sensory struggle amplified by the fog's chill, seeping through your thin garments, like wet wool from a forgotten era clinging stubbornly. And sarcasm bubbles up again, virtuous leadership. Sure, like politicians today touting ethics while lining pockets. The irony as thick as the mist that now swirls with ghostly figures of the five emperors, their innovations stacking like precarious towers, wheeled vehicles rumbling in your mind's ear, the compass spinning wildly, all attributed to these cultural heroes who blended myth with proto-history, a blend that historians debate as projection from later eras, perhaps to legitimize Han Dynasty claims, the uncertainty leaving you questioning every tale whispered in the haze. You stand slowly, joints creaking in protest, and the mists thicken around Emperor Ku, his reign a bridge of forgotten deeds, the air growing denser with the scent of blooming lotuses symbolizing purity, yet undercut by the filth of political intrigue bubbling beneath, an absurd tidbit being how these legends credited him with taming wild beasts through moral example, like training a pet dragon with kindness instead of force, far more whimsical than today's animal whisperers on TV who rely on treats and tricks. The recurring motif of torchlight flickers distantly now, mutated from cave embers to ritual braziers casting elongated shadows across the gathering, illuminating faces etched with awe and fear, the pain of blind faith evident in their bowed heads, much like scrolling through social media feeds today, where influencers peddle perfect lives that mask inner turmoil. Sarcastic how ancient myths did the same, but with cosmic stakes. Zoom out once more, the ethereal court dissolving into a broader tapestry of river valleys and mountain vales. Lyrical lines weaving through time where sage kings float like clouds over mortal struggles, shifting the tone to wistful reflection, yet snapping back with the injustice of it all, merit's promise often shattered by human frailty. The shocking element in how these ideals inspired millennia of philosophy, yet failed to prevent tyrannies. Sadder when you consider the common folk whose labours built these legends without sharing the glory. Your throat tightens from the incense's bite, a physical event as you cough softly, drawing glares from phantom attendants, and empathy floods you for the storytellers who preserved these tales through oral traditions, their voices hoarse from repetition around campfires, preserving cultural memory that outlasted empires, like viral memes today that spread ideas faster than facts. A clever commentary arises. Power's true cost isn't in inventions, but in the illusions they create. Meritocracy, a mask for control. Ironic as a job interview where qualifications matter less than connections. The mists swirl faster now, carrying hints of used labours downstream, his flood control looming like a promise unkept, and you feel the sting of transition, from mythical harmony to hereditary shadows that would warp these virtues into chains. Your shoulders sag under the burden, the fog mutating into a heavier drape, leaving you with a psychological chill. What if these sages were mere mortals elevated by time's selective memory, their inventions as fleeting as the mist itself? The ethereal forms begin to fade, but a distant rumble of waters echoes, pulling your gaze toward the horizon where reality's harsh flood waits to test the legend's worth. You toil endlessly with you under raging waters, your back arched against the relentless downpour that lashes like vengeful whips from the heavens. But have you ever considered how one man's 13-year odyssey to tame catastrophic floods could birth China's first dynasty? When geological records hinted a massive deluge around 2000 BCE that submerged entire valleys, forcing survivors to dredge channels or face oblivion. A feat that makes modern engineering marvels like the Three Gorges Dam seem like child's play built on ancient blueprints. The rain stings your exposed skin, sharp and cold, mingling with the sweat that pours down your face in salty rivulets, the texture gritty from the mud splattered across your arms as you heave another basket of sodden earth onto the growing embankment, your muscles screaming in protest with each lift. A sensory struggle that gnaws at your core like hunger amplified by exhaustion. You feel the damp mold creeping into your lungs, heavy and fungal-scented from the flooded fields around you, mutating the ethereal mists of the sage courts into this choking humidity that clings like a living shroud, while Yu's weary gaze fixes on you from afar. His figure bent but unyielding, lines etched deep into his face from years of this torment, the empathy welling up as you imagine his personal Toll family neglected, body broken, all for a people's salvation that history might reduce to legend. A physical event jolts you as a section of the makeshift dam gives way nearby, water surging through with a roar that deafens, forcing you to scramble with crude wooden tools to plug the breach, your hands blistering against the rough bark handles, the pain shooting up your arms like fire ants under the skin, much like gripping a steering wheel during a white-knuckle storm drive today, where one slip means disaster. Ironic how ancient flood control feels eerily similar to battling climate change now. With politicians dredging excuses instead of rivers, sarcasm curls your lip as you mutter through gritted teeth working with nature rather than against it. Sure, like therapy sessions advising you to embrace your demons when they're actively drowning you. A clever commentary on Yu's innovative approach of channeling waters instead of blocking them, guiding the flow to irrigate rather than devastate. A factual moment rooted in traditional texts like the Book of Documents that portray him devoting over a decade to this monumental task, traversing the land to survey and direct. Yet historians still argue whether Yu was a historical engineer or a mythical archetype crafted to embody harmonious governance. The uncertainty adding a layer of doubt that chills you deeper than the rain-soaked chill seeping into your bones. You pause to wipe your brow, the water tasting of iron on your lips as you lick them absent-mindedly, mutating that recurring motif from the metallic tang of bronze forges ahead into this rusty flavour of flooded earth. A reminder that victory's core often hides hereditary shadows waiting to creep in like damp mould spreading unseen. Zoom out poetically, and the landscape unfolds like a wrathful canvas, endless channels snaking through valleys under storm-lashed skies, shifting the tone from frantic labour to a broader vista where human will wrestles with cosmic forces, yet pulling you back with the injustice of it all. Labourers like you, conscripted from villages, their families starving while you build barriers that might save strangers downstream. The shocking element in how Yu's success led to his selection a successor, bypassing blood for merit in theory, but sadder when his son Qi inherits anyway, sparking opposition from capable ministers like Yi, a familial betrayal that echoes modern succession dramas in family businesses where the founder's vision crumbles under nepotism's weight. An absurd tidbit surfaces amid the downpour. The ancient Chinese sometimes used hollowed gourds as flotation devices during floods, bobbing like desperate buoys in the torrent. Far more precarious than today's light vests that inflate on command, yet effective enough to save lives in this era of raw survival. Your back throbs with each shovel thrust, the mud sucking at your feet like reluctant lovers, and empathy deepens for Yu himself. Traversing 9 provinces according to law, his hair greying prematurely from the strain, refusing to enter his home 3 times as he passed by. The pain of self-imposed exile, a sacrifice that modern workaholics might romanticize but could never match. Sarcastic how we complain about overtime while he literally reshaped the world without a single vacation day. The rain eases momentarily, allowing you to glimpse the progress channels directing water into productive paths, transforming destruction into irrigation that would feed growing populations. A factual anchor to the late Neolithic, when such water management supported denser settlements. Yet the academic debate lingers. Was this flood a real event correlated with climate shifts, or exaggerated to legitimize the Xia dynasty's founding around 2070 BCE, the uncertainty weaving doubt into your weary mind like threads in a fraying tapestry. You haul another load, blisters bursting under the friction, the warm ooze mixing with rain to create a slippery mess on your palms, mutating the wet wool that cling now more like sodden reeds wrapped around your waist for meager protection into a constant irritant that chafes with every movement, the sensory hardship amplifying as thunder rumbles overhead, a psychological chill settling as you realize Yu's triumph sowed seeds of change, shifting from Sage King's meritocracy to hereditary rule when Qi ascends, facing challenges that ripple like aftershocks. Sarcasm bites again harmony with nature, they said, but watch as human nature creeps in, power's mold spreading from father to son. Ironic like environmental policies today that start pure but get corrupted by lobbyists downstream. Zoom out once more, the storm clouds parting lyrically to reveal a transformed basin, channels gleaming like silver veins under fleeting sun, widening the perspective to encompass emerging hierarchies where flood control birthed state formation, yet snapping back with the shocking sadness of lost ideals ministers like Yi defeated in succession struggles, their virtues discarded like flood debris. Sadder when you think of how this tension between merit and blood would haunt Chinese politics for millennia, the pain of unfulfilled promise as tangible as the blisters on your hands. An absurd tidbit lightens the load briefly. Legends claim Yu grew a third leg from exhaustion, a mythical deformity symbolizing his tireless strides, far odder than today's ergonomic shoes designed to prevent burnout, yet capturing the heroic absurdity of pushing human limits. Your breaths come ragged now, the rain resuming its lash, and empathy for the common workers floods you, their names erased while Yu's endures, much like unsung coders behind tech giants' success stories, the injustice stinging sharper than the whips of water on your back. A clever commentary arises victory's hope carved from despair, but hereditary shadows creep in, mouldy and insidious, turning communal triumph into dynastic grip. Sarcastic how we celebrate innovators yet forget how quickly innovation sours under inheritance's weight. The embankment holds for now, water diverted safely, but you sense the creeping dampness below, mould spreading unseen in the foundations, a strange visual of dark tendrils snaking through earth, leaving you with a mood shift toward unease. What if this hard-won control merely delays the next deluge? Hereditary claims bubbling like underground springs ready to erupt, the raging waters subside to a trickle in your vision, but the shadows lengthen, hinting at empires built on unstable ground. You hammer bronze in Xi's sweltering pits, the mallet's thunderous clang reverberating through your skull like a relentless migraine. But have you ever imagined pouring molten metal in furnaces hot enough to warp reality? When around 1900 BCE, the Alitu culture often linked to this semi-legendary dynasty crafted alloys that revolutionized warfare and ritual, yet couldn't forge a barrier against the corruption that historians estimate eroded the realm from within over centuries, much like how corporate scandals today topple giants built on shiny innovations. The heat blasts your face like an open oven door, sweat cascading down your brow in stinging streams that blur your vision, the salty burn in your eyes forcing you to blink rapidly as acrid smoke from the charcoal fires coils into your lungs, thick and choking, mutating the damp mold from Yu's flood channels into this dry, blistering inferno that sears every exposed inch of your skin, leaving it red and raw like a perpetual sunburn without the beachside relief. Your arms ache with each swing of the hammer, muscles knotting into painful cords as you pound the glowing ingot on the anvil, sparks flying like angry fireflies that singe your forearms, a physical event that leaves tiny burn marks dotting your flesh, the pain sharp and immediate, reminding you of blacksmiths in old Western films who hammer away heroically but never show the aftermath of scarred hands and broken spirits. Empathy floods you for the craftsmen here, their bodies bent double in these underground pits near modern Yanxi, faces blackened by soot and futures dimmed by endless toil. The shocking element being how this bronze technology, requiring vast resources like copper from distant mines and tin from even farther afield, elevated elites while consigning workers like you to a life of filth and furnace. sadder than the anonymous graves of labourers unearthed by archaeologists, their bones twisted from repetitive strain without a single artefact to honour their sacrifice. A factual moment grounds you amid the clamour of the Xi, spanning roughly 2070 to 1600 BCE, according to traditional accounts, mark the shift from Neolithic pottery to sophisticated bronze vessels used in ancestral rites. Yet historians still argue whether this was a true centralised state or merely a confederation of chiefdoms. The uncertainty fueled by sites like Erlitou, where palatial ruins suggest power but lack definitive inscriptions, leaving gaps in the narrative like missing puzzle pieces that frustrate even the most dedicated scholars. Your throat parches from the dry heat, the metallic tang now dominating your taste buds as you inhale fumes from the melting pots, mutating that iron flavour from the floodwaters into something sharper, more forged, like biting down on a hot nail fresh from the fire, and sarcasm slips in as you grunt with another strike innovation at its finest. Turning ore into empire-building tools, but watch how forgotten promises clang hollow when kings hoard the shine for themselves. Ironic like tech startups today promising world-changing gadgets while their factory workers sweat in overseas hellholes for pennies. An absurd tidbit hammers home as you pour another ladle of molten bronze the ancient Chinese sometimes alloyed arsenic into their mixes for harder edges, unknowingly poisoning themselves with vapours that caused hallucinations and slow deaths. Far deadlier than today's vape trends that masquerade as harmless clouds but carry their own hidden toxins. You wipe your stinging eyes with a soot-streaked sleeve, the fabric rough and abrasive against your inflamed lids, a sensory struggle that intensifies the burn, and you spot the overseer barking orders from the pit's edge, his voice cutting through the din like a whip. The injustice hitting you as you realise these forges weren't just workshops, but symbols of emerging hierarchy, where skilled artisans rose slightly above peasants, yet remained chained to the elite's whims. The pain of social stratification as palpable as the hammer's recoil jarring your wrists. Zoom out poetically, and the pit expands into a network of smoky dens dotting the central plains, flames dancing like infernal stars under a smog-choked sky, shifting the tone from claustrophobic heat to a broader inferno where human ambition fuels literal fires, yet pulling you back with the empathy for families dependent on this labour. Children playing in the ash outside while their fathers cough up black phlegm. Sadder when you think of how bronze weapons like dagger axes gave military edges but couldn't slice through the rot of corruption that festered in the palaces above. Your hammer falls again, the clang echoing promises of progress vessels for rituals that connected the living to ancestors. Tripods and cauldrons symbolising stability, yet the fever of greed spreads like an unseen plague. Kings indulging in luxuries while floods still ravaged unchecked downstream. A shocking betrayal of Yu's legacy that twists your gut, the sadness deepening as you recall how his merit-based ideal crumbled when Sun Qi seized power, defeating rivals in bloody skirmishes that left loyal ministers like Yi executed, their ideals buried with them. A clever commentary arises amid the sweat empires erode from within, they say, like a fancy smartphone with a virus hidden in the code. Sarcastic how Xia's founders promised harmony but delivered hereditary rot. Much like family dynasties in business today where the kids inherit the throne and tank the stock, the heat waves distort your vision, making shadows dance menacingly on the walls, and you feel the corruption's fever building in your own veins, metaphorical yet visceral, as whispers of palace intrigues filter down even to these depths, kings neglecting dikes for personal pleasures, allowing waters to breach while bronze flows freely for weapons and ornaments, the injustice stinging sharper than the sparks on your skin. An academic uncertainty nags at you through the haze. Was Xia truly China's first dynasty, or a retroactive invention by later Shang chroniclers to legitimize their own rule? The debate raging over Erlitou's ruins where urban planning suggests statehood, but no writing confirms the legends, leaving you questioning the clang of history's hammer. Does it forge truth, or merely echo myths? Your breaths come ragged now, the air shimmering with heat distortion, and empathy for the forgotten masses surges. Peasants taxed to fund these forges while their fields lay fallow, the pain of exploitation as enduring as the bronze itself. Much like gig economy workers today grinding away for apps that profit from their sweat without sharing the shine. The recurring motif of wet wool, now mutated into sweat-soaked rags plastered to your back, chafes with every movement, amplifying the discomfort as you pour the glowing liquid into moulds. steam hissing like angry spirits released. A physical event that scalds your forearms with tiny droplets, the burn immediate and unforgiving. Sarcasm bubbles up again forgotten promises. Indeed, like campaign vows that dissolve faster than ice in this furnace, the irony thick as the slag you skim from the surface, worthless residue of grand ambitions. Zoom out once more, the pits multiplying across the landscape like festering wounds, lyrical flames leaping in rhythmic fury under an indifferent moon, widening the perspective to encompass a realm teetering on bronze's edge, yet snapping back with a shocking rot spreading last King G, paradigmatic tyrant in later tales, indulging in extravagance while ignoring the people's cries, his moral failings a fever that historians cite as heaven's withdrawal, sadder when you realize such narratives were crafted centuries later to justify conquests. The pain of rewritten history as acute as the hammer's bruise on your thumb. A strange visual emerges in the steam-twisted bronze figures warping in the heat, like empires melting under their own weight, leaving you with a mood shift toward foreboding. What if this clang of creation heralds only louder echoes of downfall ahead? The sweltering air presses closer, but a distant rumble of thunder hints at storms that could quench the fires or flood the pits anew. You etch prophecies on cracking bones in Shang's shadowy shrines, the chisel's bite sending vibrations up your arm like electric shocks from a faulty wire. But have you ever contemplated how a turtle shell could dictate the fate of empires when over 150,000 oracle bone fragments from the late Shang period, around 1250 BCE, reveal royal divinations on everything from harvest to toothaches? A custom so bizarre, it makes modern fortune cookies seem like profound wisdom dispensed from a vending machine. The metallic scent of blood fills your nostrils, sharp and coppery, assaulting you with each breath as sacrificial offerings drip from altars nearby. The warmth of it sticky on your hands where you've handled the remains, mutating the sweltering heat from Xia's forges into this cloying, visceral humidity that coats your throat like a film you can't swallow away, leaving you gagging slightly in the dim confines of the shrine. Your fingers cramp around the bronze chisel, knuckles whitening as you press into the scapular bone cow or sheep, heated until it fractures with a pop that echoes like distant thunder, the tool's edge grinding against the surface with a raspy scrape that sets your teeth on edge. A physical event that leaves fine bone dust powdering your palms, mixing with sweat to form a gritty paste that irritates your skin like sandpaper on an open wound. Empathy surges through you for the scribes here, their eyes strained in the flickering lamplight, backs hunched over these macabre canvases day after day. The shocking element being how this writing system, already sophisticated with thousands of characters by the 13th century BCE, emerged not for poetry, but for interrogating the dead. Sadder when you think of the fear it instilled, kings like Wu Ding consulting ancestors obsessively, their decisions hinging on crack patterns that could mean prosperity or ruin. The pain of uncertainty as palpable as the chisel's bite in your grip. A factual moment steadies your hand as you carve the query, will the harvest thrive, or shall famine claim us, the bone warming under your touch? Reminiscent of Anyang's vast ruins where archaeologists uncovered royal tombs filled with these inscriptions, dating the Shang from 1600 to 1046 BCE as China's first fully documented dynasty. Their capital shifting but always centered on ritual power that fused politics with the supernatural. Historians still argue whether the high god Di was an abstract supreme being or merely the deified ancestor of the royal line, the uncertainty casting doubt on every divination you perform, like questioning if your GPS is leading you home or into a dead end. But as the bone cracks under applied heat, the sound crisp and final, you feel the weight of it. All these texts documenting military campaigns against Fang peoples, royal births twisted by omens, even the king's mundane ailments, a window into elite preoccupations that ignored the masses suffering below. Your nose wrinkles at the recurring motif of iron on teeth, now mutated from the chisel's metallic bite into the bloody residue you accidentally taste when wiping your mouth. A coppery tang that lingers unpleasantly, amplifying the sensory struggle as smoke from incense braziers resin, and herbs burning low stings your eyes, tears blurring the emerging script. The filth of it all seeping into your pores alongside the shrine's damp stone walls that ooze condensation like weeping wounds. Sarcasm curls your lips as you interpret the fractures favourable. Perhaps. But who knows? Like checking your horoscope app for life advice when deep down you suspect it's algorithm-generated nonsense, tailored to keep you scrolling. Ironic how these ancient royals bet their kingdoms on bone lottery, while today's leaders consult polls and data analytics with the same blind faith. An absurd tidbit flashes in your mind amid the haze the Shang sometimes used human scapulae for divinations when animal bones weren't enough, etching prophecies on the very shoulders that once bore burdens. Far creepier than using recycled paper for notes today, yet practical in a world where nothing went to waste, even the dead. You pause to fan the smoke away, your lungs protesting with a cough that rattles deep, and the empathy deepens for the sacrificial victims. War captives or slaves led to the altars, their blood pooling in ritual basins to appease ancestors who demanded obedience through terror, the injustice hitting you like a chisel. Strike the king as divine intermediary, wielding power derived from fear, not consent, much like authoritarian regimes now that cloak control in tradition's veneer. The pain of it all in the silent pleas you imagine from those doomed souls. Sadder when excavations reveal royal tombs at Sibigang with hundreds of human remains arranged in hierarchical poses, mirroring the living court structure in death's cold embrace. Zoom out poetically, and the shrine expands into Anyang's sprawling complex, smoky tendrils rising like spectral fingers over rammed earth palaces and craft workshops, shifting the tone from intimate carving to a broader tableau of ritual dominance, yet pulling you back with a clever commentary that ancestral demands twist fate not just for kings but for all. Sarcastic how we moderns consult therapists for family issues when these folks literally bled to please their ghosts. The irony is thick as the blood-scented air. Your chisel slips slightly, nicking your thumb, a warm bead welling up to stain the bone red. A shocking mishap that blends your life force with the prophecy, the sadness intensifying as you recall how this fusion of religion and rule sustained the Shang for centuries. Their bronze vessels ding cauldrons for meat offerings, goo goblets for wine cast with intricate Teoti masks that stare back with empty eyes, artifacts of power that demanded constant tribute from peripheral tribes, the pain of subjugation echoing in the forced labour that built these shrines, like gig workers today grinding for platforms that extract without empathy. A psychological chill creeps in as the bone cools, its cracks forming patterns you must record faithfully, the uncertainty of interpretation weighing heavy. Will the ancestors approve the campaign, or withhold rain to punish hubris, much like second-guessing a cryptic text from a boss in the dead of night, but with stakes that could topple thrones? The smoke thickens, curling around you like possessive arms, and you feel the twist of fate in your gut, ancestral voices seeming to murmur through the haze, demanding more than obedience, total surrender. The strange visual of fractured bones multiplying like a mosaic of destinies, leaving you with a mood shift toward dread. What if these prophecies foretell not victory but the rot that will invite conquerors from the west? The shadowy shrine pulses with unspoken threats, but a faint clang from distant forges hints at weapons being readied for the trials ahead. You clash swords in Zhou's dawn battles, the bronze edge biting into your palm with a cold insistence that draws blood. But have you ever fathomed how a frontier clan's uprising could shatter a millennium-old dynasty in 1046 BCE, when King Wu's forces overwhelmed the Shang at Muye with tactics that turned numerical disadvantage into divine vindication? A upset so profound it birthed the mandate of heaven concept that would justify rebellions for 3,000 years, making it the ultimate historical get-out-of-jail-free card for would-be usurpers. The bitter taste of tyranny coats your lips like acrid bile rising from your throat, metallic and sharp from the blood you've swallowed after a glancing blow to your jaw. The clash of weapons ringing in your ears with a deafening cacophony that drowns out the cries of falling comrades around you, their bodies crumpling into the muddied field churned to slurry by trampling feet and overnight rain. You swing your dagger axe wildly, the haft slick with sweat and grime that makes your grip falter. A sensory struggle where the filth cakes under your nails like congealed regret, mutating the bloody residue from Shang's shrines into this battlefield muck that seeps into every cut and scrape. Burning with infection's promise as you parry a Shang spear thrust that grazes your shoulder, the pain flaring hot and immediate like touching a live wire hidden in the chaos. A physical event explodes as you charge forward with the Zhou vanguard, your boots sucking into the earth with each step, the weight of your bronze helmet pressing down like a crown of thorns that digs into your scalp, sweat stinging your eyes as you lock blades with a Shang warrior whose face twists in desperate fury. His superior armor forged from the very pits you once hammered in clanging against yours in a symphony of defiance. But the irony slips in mid-swing, sarcastic how these invaders from the west, once dismissed as semi-barbaric frontiersmen, now wield the mandate like a cosmic pink slip from heaven, claiming moral high ground against King Dishin's excesses, much like whistleblowers today toppling CEOs with leaked emails that expose lavish parties while workers starve. The clever commentary being that power's bitter taste sours fastest in the mouths of the corrupt. Empathy crashes over you like the wave of reinforcements surging past. For the Shang conscripts opposite you, their eyes wide with the terror of defection, rumours swirling through the ranks, historical accounts note how many switched sides mid-battle. Disillusioned by Dissin's reported cruelties like boiling critics alive or forcing marches through blizzards. The shocking element in how one tyrant's indulgence could unravel an empire. Sadder when you picture families back in Anyang awaiting news that never comes, their oracle bones cracking with unanswered pleas for victory. Your breath rasps harshly, lungs burning from the exertion as smoke from burning chariots upstream wafts over the field, the acrid tang mutating that iron-on-teeth motif into something charred and ashen on your tongue, like biting into overcooked meat at a barbecue gone wrong, and you dodge an arrow that whistles past your ear, embedding in the ground with a thud that vibrates up your legs, zoom out poetically, and the battlefield stretches like a canvas of carnage under a blood-red dawn. Figures locked in eternal dance across the Mu plain, shifting the tone from frantic melee to a broader tapestry where fates intertwine like tangled roots, yet pulling you back with the factual moment of King Wu's strategy, allying with discontented vassals and exploiting climatic fog to mask movements. A maneuver that turned the tide, though historians still argue whether the Shang's numerical superiority was exaggerated by Zhou propagandists to glorify their underdog victory. The uncertainty layering doubt over every clash, like questioning if a viral underdog story online was staged for likes. An absurd tidbit flashes amid the frenzy the Shang king reportedly committed suicide by self-immolation in his palace. Flames consuming his treasures in a pyre of excess, far more dramatic than today's celebrity meltdowns that end in rehab rather than ashes, yet capturing the theatrical end of tyrants who burn bright only to extinguish spectacularly. Your shoulder throbs where the spear grazed, the wound weeping blood that soaks your tunic, a sensory hardship that joins the mud's cling and the smoke's sting, amplifying the injustice as you witness Zhou allies' former Shang vassals turning coats mid-fight. Their betrayal bitter as the tyranny you taste, the pain of fractured loyalties as acute as the blade nicking your forearm in a desperate parry. Sarcasm bubbles up through gritted teeth heaven's mandate, slipping like elusive mist through grasping fingers. What a convenient excuse for conquest, like blaming market forces for layoffs when it's really greed at the helm, the irony thick as the fog rolling in to aid your side's advance. You revisit Yu's legacy here, that flood tamer from distant mists, but with a surprising twist his meritocratic ideal, once pure in channel-digging days, now weaponized by Zhou propagandists to justify overthrowing Shang's corrupt line, claiming heaven withdraws favor from the unworthy, a clever repurposing that twists the knife deeper, sadder when you realize how this doctrine would enable endless cycles of rise and fall, empowering rebels while cautioning rulers, much like constitutional checks today that promise balance but often serve the ambitious. Your sword arm falters from fatigue, the clash growing sporadic as Shang lines crumble, defections rippling through like a plague, and the empathy deepens for King Dishin, painted as paradigmatic tyrant in later texts, with tales of extravagant harems and cruel punishments, but perhaps exaggerated by victors historians debate if he was monster or merely misguided, the uncertainty humanizing him in your mind's eye as you imagine his final moments, flames licking at his robes while his empire burns, the shocking sadness in how one man's failings could doom thousands, their blood on the field mixing with yours in anonymous pools. Zoom out once more, the dawn battles fading into a mosaic of clashing bronzes under lifting mists, lyrical chaos resolving into fragile order as Zhou banners rise triumphant, widening the perspective to encompass a new era's birth pangs. yet snapping back with the psychological chill of victory's cost mandate claimed. But at what price to the souls scattered like mist-dispersed ghosts? An absurd tidbit lightens the grim scene momentarily. Zhou warriors sometimes use chariots introduced from steppe nomads, horses snorting in the fray. A foreign innovation that revolutionized warfare like gunpowder would later, far more game-changing than adding wheels to a shopping cart today for easier hauls, yet deadly in its mobility. Your wounds pulse with each heartbeat, the bitter taste persisting as you survey the aftermath, bodies strewn like discarded puppets. The injustice of it all in how heavens slip through fingers birthed not just order but endless justifications for violence. Sarcastic how we still invoke divine right in subtler forms, like manifest destiny excusing conquest past and present. The mist thins, revealing the fragile new order taking shape amid the wreckage, alliances forming like tentative threads. But you sense the creeping shadows of future fractures, the pain of birthing something meant to last yet doomed to erode. A strange visual lingers in the haze, swords embedded in the earth like crooked grave markers, hilts pointing skyward as if accusing the heavens themselves, leaving you with a mood shift toward wary hope. What fragile peace can emerge from such bloody dawn? When mandate's grasp feels as slippery as the blood on your hands, the battlefield quiets, but echoes of clashes hint at orders yet to solidify or shatter anew. You forge uneasy pacts in feudal courts, the parchment crinkling under your trembling fingers like brittle leaves in autumn's grasp. But have you ever grasped how a system designed for eternal loyalty could unravel into betrayal's cold embrace within mere generations? When the Zhou dynasty's enfeoffment in 1046 BCE distributed lands to over 100 relatives and allies, creating a web of obligations that spanned vast territories, yet frayed spectacularly by the 8th century, much like family trusts today that promise unity but dissolve into lawsuits over inheritance squabbles. The cold draft whistles through the hall's timber cracks, chilling your spine with a shiver that races down to your toes, the air laced with the musty scent of aged silk banners hanging limp from the rafters, their once vibrant dyes faded to ghostly hues that brush against your shoulders like spectral fingers as you bow before the Duke of Zhou, his regent's gaze piercing through the dim torchlight that flickers erratically, casting elongated shadows on the rammed earth walls. Your knees press into the woven mat, its coarse fibers digging into your skin through thin robes, a sensory struggle that grates like sand in an open wound, mutating the battlefield muck from Mu's chaos into this refined yet insidious discomfort of courtly intrigue, where the chill seeps deeper than any winter wind, amplified by the knowledge that these packs sealed with ritual toasts of millet wine whose sour tang lingers on your lips bind kin in loyalty, yet sow seeds of rivalry as generations dilute blood ties. A physical event unfolds as you extend the jade tablet symbolizing your fief, your hands steady despite the tremor from the draft's bite, the stone cool and unyielding against your palm, and the Duke accepts it with a nod, his voice murmuring oaths of mutual defense while his eyes betray a calculating glint, the weight of the tablet suddenly heavy as if laden with unspoken ambitions, much like signing a non-compete clause in a modern job contract that promises security but chains you to potential backstabbers down the line. Ironic how feudal vows mirrored corporate handshakes, both weaving webs that fray under self-interest's pull. Empathy wells up for the lesser lords scattered across the hall, their faces etched with the strain of travel from distant domains, bodies still bearing scars from the Shang conquest, now forced to pledge fealty in this fragile new order, where the Zhou king claims ritual supremacy, but delegates real power. The shocking element in how close relatives received the largest territories, fostering alliances that felt familial, yet fermented jealousy like wine turning to vinegar. Sadder when you picture brothers turned rivals over border disputes, their shared childhood memories dissolving in the acid of ambition. A factual moment anchors you as the ceremony proceeds, the book of documents later recording these enfeoffments as the Fengjian system, dividing the realm into concentric zones of control radiating from the royal domain in the Wei River Valley, with vassals owing military service and tribute. Yet historians still argue whether this was true feudalism akin to medieval Europe or a uniquely Chinese kinship network, the uncertainty blurring the lines between loyalty and opportunism, like debating if a family business partnership is genuine collaboration or a powder keg waiting for a spark. Your spine tingles anew from the draft, now carrying whispers of court gossip through the air, the iron-on-teeth motif mutating from battlefield clashes into the subtle grind of your jaw as you clench against the chill, tasting the faint metallic residue of the wine cup's rim, a reminder of bronze's enduring role in these rituals where vessels commemorate pacts with inscribed oaths, their surfaces etched like the oracle bones you once carved, but now symbolizing fragile bonds rather than divine will. Sarcasm creeps into your thoughts as another lord swears allegiance, his voice booming with false warmth, eternal loyalty. Sure, like wedding vows in a Vegas chapel that last until the honeymoon's hangover kicks in, the clever commentary highlighting how kinship diluted over time. Third-generation vassals sharing only distant ancestry with the king, their pacts fraying like worn silk in the wind of personal agendas, much like extended family reunions today, where old grudges surface over the turkey. An absurd tidbit surfaces amid the murmurs the Zhou sometimes sealed alliances with ritual hunts, chasing deer through forests where arrows could accidentally miss their mark and hit rivals instead. Far more perilous than today's team-building paintball games that promise bonding but deliver bruises and bad blood. You shift uncomfortably on the mat, the coarse weave chafing your knees raw, a sensory hardship that joins the draft's persistent nip, amplifying the injustice as you witness marriage alliances being negotiated in hushed corners. Daughters traded like commodities to cement ties, the pain of it etched in the young women's downcast eyes, their futures bartered for political stability. Sadder when you revisit King Wu from the Dawn battles with a surprising twist. His unexpected death shortly after victory thrust his young son Cheng onto the throne, sparking the regency of the Duke of Zhou, who crushed rebellions from royal brothers with ruthless efficiency, turning sibling bonds into battlegrounds and proving kinship's web could ensnare as easily as protect. Zoom out, poetically, and the court dissolves into a sprawling network of fiefs across the North China plain, silk threads of loyalty stretching like spiderwebs under a stormy sky, shifting the tone from intimate oaths to a broader entanglement where ambitions pull at fragile strands, yet snapping back with the empathy for common folk outside these halls, peasants tilling fields to fund vassal armies, their backs bent under taxes that fueled feasts they never tasted. The shocking element in how this system maintained stability for 2 centuries through personal relationships and shared rituals, yet ignored the growing chill of inequality that would freeze the dynasty's core. Your fingers flex around the jade tablet, its cool surface now warming from your grip, and sarcasm lightens the moment briefly webs of loyalty, they call it, but feels more like a tangled earbud cord that trips you up when you least expect. Ironic how the mandate's moral framework, born from Shang's overthrow, now cloaks this decentralized rule where kings perform cosmic rituals while vassals wield actual power. Much like CEOs today, delegating to managers who run the show behind the scenes, the draft gusts stronger, carrying scents of roasting meat from the banquet preparations, but you taste only the bitterness of potential betrayal. The pain of fraying bonds is evident in the Duke's subtle warnings about distant kin plotting in their fiefs. The academic uncertainty nagging was this enfeoffment, a deliberate decentralization to control vast lands, or an ad hoc solution that sowed its own downfall, debated fiercely in light of later centralization, under chin. An absurd tidbit tickles your mind amid the tension vassals sometimes presented tribute in the form of exotic birds whose squawks disrupted court ceremonies, far more chaotic than gifting quirky mugs at office parties today, yet symbolizing the exotic fringes of Zhou influence. You stand as the pacts conclude, your spine stiff from the cold, the silk banners brushing your arm like farewell caresses, and empathy for the Duke himself surges. He voluntarily relinquished regency to young King Cheng, a rare act of restraint that became legendary, yet twisted by later interpretations as the ideal balance of power. The sadness in how such virtue proved exceptional amid the creeping rivalries. Zoom out once more, the feudal courts multiplying across river valleys like nodes in a vast net, lyrical winds whispering through silk threads that billow and tear, widening the perspective to encompass an era of uneasy peace, yet snapping back with the psychological chill of betrayal's draft kin turning rivals. What once bound now binds too tightly. The strange visual of frayed banners unraveling in slow motion, threads drifting like lost souls in the breeze, leaving you with a mood shift toward foreboding how long before these webs snap entirely. alliances crumbling like worn silk caught in an unforgiving gale. The court's murmurs fade, but echoes of oaths linger, hinting at fractures yet to widen. You flee eastward through dust storms and raids, the grit blasting your face like 1,000 invisible needles pricking your skin raw. But have you ever realized how a single nomadic incursion in 771 BCE could shatter the Zhou dynasty's western heart, forcing the royal court to abandon Haojing in flames, while King Yu's obsession with a concubine's smile, lighting false beacons for amusement, left loyal vassals disillusioned and the capital defenseless? A folly so absurd it makes modern pranks gone viral seem tame by comparison. The wind howls mercilessly, whipping sand into your eyes with stinging fury, tears streaming down your cheeks in salty tracks that crust on your parched lips, cracking open with each desperate gasp for air that tastes of dry earth and despair, the texture coarse and unrelenting as it coats your tongue like a layer of forgotten ash from distant fires. Your feet pound the arid path, boots worn thin from endless marching, blisters bursting under the friction to ooze sticky fluid that soaks into the leather, a sensory struggle that throbs with every step, mutating the courtly chill from feudal halls into this desiccating gale that strips moisture from your body like a thief in the night, leaving your throat raw and voice hoarse as you shout warnings to the caravan behind you, refugees from the sacked capital, their wagons creaking under loads of salvaged bronzes and scrolls, the weight pulling you all eastward toward Luoyang's uncertain safety. A physical event erupts as nomadic Quan riders crest a distant ridge, their horse hooves thundering like approaching doom, arrows whistling past your ear to thud into a companion's shield, forcing you to dive behind a rocky outcrop, heart pounding in your chest as dust clouds billow around you, the impact jarring your bones like a fall from grace, much like dodging traffic in a modern city chase where one wrong move spells disaster. Ironic how these steppe invaders, hardened by grassland's harsh whims, exploited Zhou's internal rot with precision strikes that exposed the feudal system's fragility. Sarcastic commentary on how a king's infatuation with Baosi, her laughter reportedly sparking those false alarms, alienated allies faster than a bad tweet tanks a celebrity's career today. Empathy overwhelms you for the fleeing courtiers, their silk robes tattered and dust-caked, faces etched with the terror of lost privilege. The shocking element in how King Yu's violation of succession norms, favouring a concubine's son over rightful heirs, ignited rebellions that nomads amplified. Sadder when you picture families separated in the chaos, children clutching fading ritual banners as symbols of a crumbling order, their innocence shattered by the injustice of royal caprice that turned heaven's mandate into a punchline for opportunists. A factual moment steadies your ragged breath as you peek over the rock. The Eastern Zhou era dawning in this exodus, the court relocating to Luoyang where royal power diminished to mere ritual, while vassal states grew autonomous, spanning from 770 BCE onward, in what later annals divided into spring and autumn periods. Yet historians still argue whether this eastern exile was a strategic retreat or humiliating rout. The uncertainty fueled by biased Zhou chronicles that painted the move as preservation rather than defeat, like corporate spin doctors rebranding a bankruptcy as a pivot. Your lips crack further as you lick them futilely, the iron-on-teeth motif mutating from battlefield clashes into this gritty sand that grinds between your molars, tasting of mineral defeat and nomadic dust, a reminder of iron tools spreading during this era, democratizing warfare beyond bronze elites, amplifying the sensory hardship as thirst claws at your insides, your canteen long empty in this parched flight. Sarcasm bites through your pain, fading rituals cling like tattered banners. As if mumbling ancestral prayers could shield against arrows sharper than any courtly intrigue. The clever commentary highlighting how the Zhou king retained sacrificial duties but lost real authority, vassals paying lip service while building independent armies, much like franchise owners today nodding to corporate HQ while running their stores as mini-kingdoms. An absurd tidbit flickers in your mind amid the storm's howl. The nomads sometimes used fermented mare's milk as a staple, a sour brew that sustained raids but induced hallucinations in the unaccustomed, far weirder than chugging energy drinks for an all-nighter now, yet fueling their mobility that outpaced Zhou's cumbersome chariots. You scramble up as the raiders veer off, perhaps deterred by your caravan's meagre defences, but the chill seeps deeper, a psychological draft whispering of betrayal's legacy from earlier pacts. revisiting the Duke of Zhou with a surprising twist his regency's stability. Once a beacon of virtue, now mocked by this exile where his descendants cling to rituals like lifelines in a sea of autonomy. The pain of eroded legacy as tangible as the sand abrading your skin. Sadder when you consider how this fragmentation catalyzed cultural blooms later. Philosophers rising from the ashes of unity lost. Zoom out poetically, and the dust storm engulfs the plain like a shroud over fading empires. Caravans snaking eastward in lyrical procession under turbulent skies, shifting the tone from frantic flight to a broader migration where defeat births reinvention, yet snapping back with the empathy for common folk caught in the crossfire. Peasants abandoning fields to join the exodus, their backs laden with meagre possessions while nomadic threats loom like perpetual shadows. The shocking injustice in how royal distractions doom thousands to this weary trek. Their rituals, ancestral tablets clutch tightly fading symbols of order, unraveling thread by thread. Your frame weakens under the burden, the tattered banners flapping against your side like defeated flags, and sarcasm lightens the grim march, briefly nomadic threats. They call them, but feels more like uninvited guests crashing a party already in ruins. Ironic how the Gobi's winds carried these raiders southward, exploiting climatic shifts that favoured pastoral life over Zhou's agrarian base, much like global warming today displacing populations while the powerful debate from air-conditioned halls. The parched lips split anew as you sip from a shared water skin, the liquid warm and meagre, amplifying the hardship as thirst's claw tightens, the filth of dust layering your sweat into a crusty mask that cracks with every grimace. An academic uncertainty nags through the haze was the 771's sack, a coordinated betrayal by vassals allied with Quan, or mere opportunistic plunder, debated in light of archaeological fortifications that suggest Zhou defences weakened by internal neglect. The doubt weaving paranoia into your steps like unseen snares. You press on, the caravan's murmurs of ritual chants clinging faintly, banners fluttering in defiance, but the chill deepens with each mile eastward, the pain of defeat's weariness settling like lead in your limbs. Sadder when you foresee how this exile will dilute royal aura, vassals rising as independent powers, while the king performs empty ceremonies, the injustices biting as the wind's relentless assault. A clever commentary arises amid the grit-tattered banners in defeat, symbolic of a system where loyalties silk frays under ambition's scissors, sarcastic how we romanticize feudal bonds when they often snapped like brittle promises, much like social media follows that unfollow at the first sign of controversy. The storm abates slightly, revealing the eastern horizon's dim outline, but shadows of raiders linger on the flanks, the strange visual of dust devils twisting like nomadic spirits chasing your weary frame, leaving you with a mood shift toward resilient dread. What new fractures will this flight birth? When defeat's banners wave not in surrender, but as harbingers of fragmented realms, the path stretches endlessly, but echoes of raids hint at hegemonies yet to rise from the ashes. You maneuver through spring and autumn's treacherous alliances, the quill scratching across bamboo slips with a raspy whisper that echoes your mounting unease. But have you ever wondered how a single diplomatic summit in 651 BCE could crown Duke Huan of Qi as the first hegemon, forging a fragile peace among over 140 squabbling states through sheer cunning and military bluster? A power play so intricate it makes modern UN negotiations look like kindergarten sharing circles, where everyone gets a turn but no one wins. The sharp pang of ink stains your fingers, black and indelible like bruises from unseen slaps, the scent of fresh bamboo heavy in the air, mingling with the faint, oily smoke from oil lamps that cast jittery shadows across the negotiation tent's silk walls, their fabric billowing slightly in the evening breeze that carries hints of distant campfires and horse sweat, mutating the nomadic dust from your eastern flight into this refined yet suffocating haze that clings to your robes, heavy and damp like wet wool resurrected from forgotten rains, pressing against your chest with a weight that makes breathing laboured, a sensory struggle where the chill of betrayal seeps into your bones despite the tense warmth, amplified by the overseer's glare from across the low table, his eyes narrowing as you draft terms that bind states in uneasy truce. A physical event jolts you as another envoy slams his fist on the table, the vibration travelling up your arm like a shockwave, spilling ink across the slips in dark rivulets that mirror the blood oaths sworn here. your hand darting to salvage the document, fingers smudged and stinging from the acrid liquid that burns like mild acid on a cut. Much like fumbling a crucial email in a high-stakes corporate merger, where one typo could unravel deals worth millions. Ironic how these ancient pacts, sealed with ritual toasts of sour wine whose aftertaste lingers bitterly on your tongue, promised mutual defense against barbarian incursions, yet fermented rivalries faster than yeast in a brewery. Sarcastic commentary on how hegemons like Juan rose by convening conferences that resolved succession disputes upstream but sowed seeds of jealousy downstream, leaving trust's remnants scattered like autumn leaves in a gale of ambition. Empathy surges through you for the smaller states' delegates, their faces gaunt from travel's toll, eyes hollow with the fear of absorption by larger neighbours like Jin or Chu. The shocking element in how this era spanning 770 to 476 BCE saw the Zhou King's ritual authority dwindle to symbolic gestures, while real power shifted to these BA who enforced order without claiming the throne. Sadder when you picture envoys returning home with hollow victories, their families awaiting news of alliances that might save villages from raids, but often invited meddling instead. The pain of diplomatic wounds smarting deeper than any battlefield scar, festering in the silence of unkept promises. A factual moment steadies your quill as you note the terms interstate laws governing envoy immunity and legitimate warfare, emerging from these summits like the Covenant of the League from later centuries. Yet historians still argue whether this was genuine multilateralism or mere hegemony veiled in diplomacy. The uncertainty rooted in the Spring and Autumn Annals' terse chronicles that hint at underlying machinations without spelling them out. Like reading between the lines of a redacted government report, your teeth grind slightly, the iron-on-teeth motif mutating from the nomadic grit into this subtle clench against the wine's metallic edge, a taste that persists as you sip to seal the pact, amplifying the sensory hardship where the tense stuffiness presses in, sweat beading on your brow despite the cooling night, the filth of unwashed travel clothes chafing under your belt like an insistent itch you can't scratch without losing face. Sarcasm curls your thoughts as another hegemon's representative boasts of military reform standardized units and population registries in Qi under Guanzhong, boosting state power like efficiency hacks in a startup. But watch how these improvements tax the peasants dry. Ironic how philosophers later praise such pragmatism while ignoring the human cost, much like applauding AI optimizations today that displace workers en masse with a cheerful progress. An absurd tidbit flickers amid the murmurs these envoys sometimes carried cowrie shells as proto-currency for bribes. Their clinking in pouches a subtle soundtrack to negotiations, far quirkier than slipping cash under tables now, yet effective in swaying votes without leaving paper trails. You lean back slightly, the mat shifting under you with a soft rustle. But the pang returns as whispers circulate of Chu's southern expansions, absorbing non-Zhou peoples into their fold, the injustice hitting you as you envision border tribes forced into tribute, their cultures diluted like ink in water, the pain of cultural erasure as acute as the diplomatic slights you endure here. Sadder when you revisit the Duke of Zhou from Regency days with a surprising twist his centralized ideals, once a beacon against chaos, now mocked by this fragmented reality where vassals like Qi convene their own summits, turning his web of kinship into a patchwork of power grabs that erode the royal domain's aura. Zoom out poetically, and the tent dissolves into a mosaic of scattered courts across the fractured plain, silk threads of envoys crisscrossing like veins pulsing with cunning blood, shifting the tone from tense bargaining to a broader web where alliances rise and fall on tides of ambition, yet snapping back with the empathy for common folk outside these silken walls, farmers conscripted for hegemon-led coalitions against barbarians, their backs bent under increased taxes for iron weapons and salt monopolies. The shocking element in how administrative innovations like Guanzhong's reforms, registering households for efficient levies, boosted states like Qi but squeezed the life from villages, leaving families starving while elites feasted on diplomatic banquets. The pain of inequality festering like an untreated wound in the social body. Your fingers ache from gripping the quill too tightly, the ink's sting persisting as a minor burn, and sarcasm lightens the grim undertone briefly treacherous alliances. They call them but feels more like a bad group project in school where one kid does all the work and others claim the grade. Ironic how spring and autumn's name evokes seasonal renewal, yet masks a slow decay of central authority. Much like corporate rebrands that promise fresh starts, but deliver the same old hierarchies. The lamps flicker lower, casting grotesque shadows that dance like scheming phantoms, the air growing stale with exhaled breaths and unspoken suspicions, amplifying the hardship where trust's remnants scatter before your eyes, the filth of political games clinging to your soul like invisible grime. An academic uncertainty nags through the haze. Was Duke Huan's hegemony a stabilizing force or mere prelude to greater wars? Debated in light of the annals' biased Zhou perspective that downplays vassal autonomy, the doubt-weaving paranoia into the pact's fine print like hidden clauses in a contract. You seal the document with a wax stamp, the heat from the candle briefly warming your chilled fingers, but the pang of diplomatic wounds smartens anew as side glances reveal hidden agendas. The pain of fragile trust as tangible as the parchment's crinkle. Sadder when you foresee how these tides of cunning will swell into outright conflict. Hegemons rising only to crash against rivals' shores. A clever commentary arises amid the final toasts, leaving trust's remnants scattered like autumn leaves, symbolic of pacts that wither under winter's approach. Sarcastic how we romanticize diplomacy, when it's often just dressed-up deception. Much like dating apps promising connections but delivering ghosting galore. The tent flaps open to the night, a cool breeze dispersing the smoke, but shadows of envoys linger like doubts. The strange visual of autumn leaves swirling in eddies outside, crimson and gold against the darkening sky, leaving you with a mood shift towards cynical resolve what cunning tides will carry these alliances next, when what rises must inevitably fall into the churn of greater ambitions. The negotiations conclude, but echoes of bartered words hint at storms brewing beyond the horizon. You swing iron in warring states' chaotic fray, the blade whistling through the air with a deadly hum that vibrates in your chest like a tuning fork struck too hard. But have you ever grasped how a single crossbow bolt could pierce aristocratic armor from 200 yards in the 4th century BCE? Revolutionizing warfare during this era of endless conflict from 475 to 221 BCE, when 7 major states devoured over 100 smaller ones, in a cannibalistic frenzy of alliances and betrayals that makes today's geopolitical chess games feel like checkers played by amateurs with half the pieces missing. The iron clashes against your opponent's shield with a resounding clang that jars your teeth, the metallic tang flooding your mouth as if you've bitten down on a coin hidden in bitter fruit, mutating that recurring motif from the diplomatic ink sting into this raw, ferrous bite that grinds between your molars with each parry. The sweat pouring down your face in stinging rivulets that blur your vision amid the dust-choked battlefield, where the air hangs thick with the acrid stench of burning villages upstream. Smoke curling into your nostrils like invasive fingers probing for weakness. A sensory struggle that leaves your lungs heaving and eyes watering. The filth of churned mud splattering your legs in clumpy layers that weigh you down like chains forged from the earth itself. Your muscles throb with each swing, arms burning from the ceaseless drills imposed by state reformers like Wu Qi and Wei, who organized infantry into disciplined phalanxes that turned peasants into professional killers. A physical event erupting as you thrust forward in formation, your spear glancing off enemy bronze only to embed in flesh with a sickening thud that sends a shockwave up your arm, the warm spray hitting your face in sticky droplets that mix with your sweat, the pain shooting through your shoulder like fire ants burrowing under skin, much like overexerting in a gym session gone wrong where the burn promises gains but delivers only regret. Ironic how these warring states' innovations, iron weapons, democratizing death beyond elite bronze monopolies, empowered the masses to slaughter each other for kings who'd never soil their hands. Sarcastic commentary on how meritocratic military ranks rewarded kills with land grants, turning survival's blade into a ladder of ambition sharper than any sword. Like corporate bonuses today, incentivizing cutthroat competition, while executives watch from ivory towers. Empathy crashes over you like the wave of advancing troops. For the conscripts beside you, their faces gaunt from rationed millet porridge that barely sustains the grind, eyes hollow with the terror of endless campaigns that pull them from farms to fronts. The shocking element in how states like Qin under Shangyang implemented household registration for conscription, binding families in mutual responsibility, where one deserter doomed the kin. Sadder when you picture villages emptied of men, women toiling alone in fields while children starve, the pain of fractured homes as acute as the spear wound blooming red on your comrade's side. His gasp a silent accusation against philosophers' hollow words that promise harmony amid this chaos. A factual moment grounds you as you retreat a step. The crossbowmen behind unleashing volleys that whine overhead like angry hornets. Technology pioneered in Chu around the 7th century BCE, now standard across states. Yet historians still argue whether cavalry adoption from northern nomads truly tilted balances or merely accelerated the body count. The uncertainty woven into every tactical shift like doubts in a general's war council, where strategies evolve from chariot nobility to mass infantry hordes that overwhelm through sheer numbers and iron's edge. Your teeth chatter slightly from the adrenaline crash, the iron tang persisting as you bite back a cry, mutating further into the gritty residue of battlefield dust that coats your mouth like a false promise of sustenance, amplifying the sensory hardship where thirst claws at your throat, your water skin long emptied in the fray, the recurring wet wool now sodden from blood and sweat rather than rain clinging to your torso, in heavy folds that chafe with every twist, the filth seeping into wounds that fester without mercy. Sarcasm bubbles up through your laboured breaths. Philosophers' words echo hollow, sure, like self-help podcasts preaching inner peace while you're dodging deadlines in traffic. The clever commentary highlighting how Confucius wandered states, offering virtue-based rule to deaf ears. His emphasis on ritual propriety, a balm ignored by legalists like Shang Yang who prioritize strict laws and rewards. Turning states into machines of war where min replies don't matter, only min kills for promotion. Ironic how this era's 100 schools flowered amid bloodshed, ideas clashing as fiercely as armies, much like online forums today, where debates rage while the world burns around them. An absurd tidbit flashes in your mind amid the melee, the state of Zhao, sometimes armoured horses with tiger skins to terrify enemies, their roars mimicked by riders blowing horns. Far wilder than Halloween costumes scaring kids now, yet psychologically effective in routing foes before blades even crossed. A tactic that saved lives through fear rather than force. You pivot sharply, the mud sucking at your boots with a reluctant slurp, but the throb in your muscles intensifies as another wave crashes, spears interlocking in a wall of iron that pushes back the Chu advance, the injustice hitting you as you spot conscripts from conquered polities fighting for their new masters, their loyalties coerced like indentured servants in colonial times, the pain of subjugation as tangible as the bruise blooming on your ribs from a shield bash. Sadder when you revisit Duke Huan from earlier hegemon summits, with a surprising twist his stabilizing pacts. Once a beacon against barbarian threats, now fractured into this all-out fray where states like Qin experiment with meritocracy and ranks, promoting talented commoners over aristocrats, the empathy for displaced nobles mixing with grim satisfaction at the upheaval, their silken privileges stripped like leaves in autumn's gale, zoom out poetically, and the battlefield expands into a patchwork of warring realms across the fractured plain, iron blades flashing like lightning in a storm of human ambition, shifting the tone from personal clash to a broader maelstrom where states devour each other in lyrical cycles of rise and ruin, yet snapping back with the shocking chaos where diplomatic wounds from failed alliances reopen in blood, the pain of betrayal as fresh as the gash on your arm that weeps steadily, your vision blurs from sweat and fatigue, the hollow echo of philosophers' ideals, Mosey's universal love sounding naive amid the screams, Laozi's natural flow drowned by the grind ringing false against survival's relentless blade that demands action over abstraction. The sadness in how these thinkers travelled courts seeking patrons, while you bleed for princes who heed only power's call. Much like artists today pitching to producers who prioritise profit over profundity, a clever commentary arises amid the din chaotic fray where muscles throb from the grind. But watch how reform's blade cuts both ways, empowering states like Qin with legalist efficiency, while philosophers' hollow echoes offer scant comfort. Sarcastic how we idolize these sages now when contemporaries dismissed them as dreamers, like TED Talks inspiring applause but changing little in boardrooms. The iron swings again, connecting with flesh in a wet thud that sprays warmth across your cheek, the filth of battle layering anew, but a distant horn signals retreat. The strange visual of banners wilting in the haze like defeated spirits, leaving you with a mood shift toward weary anticipation. What philosophical balm can soothe this ache when survival's blade hovers eternally? Poised for the next cut, the fray subsides to uneasy lulls. But echoes of iron clashes hint at hegemonies crumbling into greater wars. You labour on Qin's endless barriers under watchful paranoia, the mallet's thud echoing through your skull like a judge's gavel sealing fates. But have you ever fathomed how a wall stretching over 3,000 miles could devour the lives of nearly 400,000 conscripts in the 3rd century BCE? When Qin Shi Huang's unification frenzy in 221 BCE forged an empire from warring fragments through sheer brutality, a mega-project so vast it dwarfs modern border walls, yet was built on bones and broken spirits, making today's construction delays seem like minor hiccups in a coffee run. The dust swirls into your mouth with every breath, coating your throat like an accusation etched in grit, thick and abrasive as it scrapes down your windpipe, forcing coughs that rack your body and leave your lungs burning with each inhale, the texture dry and unyielding like swallowing sandpaper rolled in regret, mutating the chaotic phrase iron tang from warring states' battles into this choking haze that clings to your tongue, metallic and relentless, amplified by the sun-baked earth that radiates heat upward through your threadbare sandals, blistering your soles as you haul another massive stone into place, the weight crushing your shoulders until your vertebrae creak in protest, a sensory struggle that joins the ever-present filth of sweat-mixed mortar, caking your skin in a crusty layer that cracks and itches with every movement, as if your body itself is becoming part of this monstrous barrier snaking across mountains and deserts. A physical event erupts as the overseer's whip cracks nearby, not touching you but close enough to make you flinch, your hammer slipping mid-strike to smash your thumb against the rock, pain exploding white-hot and throbbing in rhythm with your heartbeat, blood welling up to mix with the dust in dark rivulets that stain the stone. The shocking element in how this great wall pieced from existing fortifications of conquered states wasn't a seamless monolith, but a patchwork of suffering. Sadder when you picture families upstream receiving news of loved ones worked to death, their bodies interred in the very walls they built, anonymous tombs stretching endlessly like forgotten accusations against the Emperor's ambition. Empathy surges through you for the convicts beside you, their faces gaunt from meagre rations of millet gruel that barely sustains the grind, eyes hollow with the despair of endless labour under guards who enforce quotas with mutilations. The pain of severed fingers or branded foreheads, a constant reminder of failure's cost, much like prison work programs today that promise rehabilitation but deliver exploitation under the guise of justice. Ironic how Qin Shi Huang's standardization unifying weights, measures, and even axle widths for carts squeeze the life from diverse whispers across the realm, turning cultural mosaics into monotonous echoes of imperial will. Sarcastic commentary on how this efficiency mirrored corporate mergers that homogenize brands while erasing local flavors, leaving workers as interchangeable cogs in a machine that grinds on without mercy. A factual moment anchors you as you reset the stone, the wall's rammed earth core compacted under your feet, this megastructure extending Qin's reach from the Bohai Sea westward through the Ordos Loop, absorbing technologies like crossbows from vanquished foes. Yet historians still argue whether it was primarily defensive against Yongnu nomads or a psychological tool to unify the fractured populace through shared suffering. The uncertainty layered into every layer of dirt you pack down, like debating if a firewall protects data or merely imprisons it. Your throat constricts further from the dust, the iron tang persisting as you bite back a groan, mutating anew into the gritty residue of pulverized rock that coats your lips like a false veil of endurance, amplifying the hardship where thirst claws at you relentlessly, your water skin rationed to sips that do little against the sun's merciless glare reflecting off the barrier's growing height. Sarcasm slips through your clenched jaw, standardization's iron fist, they call it, but feels more like a straitjacket tailored by a sadist. The clever commentary highlighting how Qin Shi Huang, born Ying Zheng, abolished feudal titles overnight, replacing them with appointed officials in 36 commanderies, rotating bureaucrats to prevent local loyalties from taking root, much like corporate HQ shuffling managers to crush office cliques today. Ironic how this meritocracy on paper masked a paranoia that burned books and buried scholars alive in 213 BCE, erasing Confucian texts that dared question absolute rule, the pain of intellectual suppression as acute as the hammer's bruise on your hand, sadder when you revisit Duke Huan from hegemon days with a surprising twist his diplomatic webs, once fragile threads of truce, now crushed under Qin's fist that standardized even writing scripts, eliminating regional variants to forge a unified voice that spoke only the emperor's will. The empathy for silenced voices echoing in your mind like ghosts of debates lost to flames. Zoom out poetically, and the wall unfurls like a colossal serpent coiling across the landscape, dust clouds rising in lyrical plumes under a pitiless sky, shifting the tone from personal toil to a broader tyranny, where human will imposes order on nature's chaos, yet snapping back with a shocking paranoia that watches your every move, guards patrolling with eyes like hawks, ready to report slackers for mutilation or worse, the injustice hitting you as convicts from defeated states' former Chi farmers or Chu warriors labour beside you. Their diverse accents hushed under threat, the pain of cultural erasure festering like untreated wounds in this melting pot of misery. An absurd tidbit bubbles up amid the grunts. The Emperor's quest for immortality led to expeditions seeking elixirs from mythical islands, sailors returning with tales of mermaids and eternal youth potions laced with mercury that slowly poisoned him instead. Far loonier than anti-aging creams peddled on infomercials today, yet deadly in its delusion, contributing to his growing madness that demanded ever more labour for projects like his Yipang Palace. Vast enough to host 10,000 yet never completed, the sadness in how such vanity devoured lives while promising eternity. Your blisters weep openly now, the filth grinding into them with each heft of stone, and empathy for the buried scholars surges. Over 460 Confucians executed for possessing forbidden texts, their screams imagined in the wind's howl, the pain of knowledge's purge as tangible as the whip's threat overhead. Sarcastic how we celebrate innovators like Qin Shi Huang for unification, while glossing over the horror, like praising a CEO for record profits while ignoring the layoffs that funded them. A clever commentary arises amid the dust squeezing life from diverse whispers, symbolic of an iron fist that unifies by crushing. Ironic how this era's legalist reforms under Shangyang harsh laws with rewards for snitching built Qin's might but sowed paranoia that infected the throne. Much like surveillance states today monitoring citizens for security that feels more like suffocation, the sun dips lower, casting long shadows that dance menacingly along the wall's crest. But your labour continues under torchlight now flickering to life, the flame's heat adding to the swelter without chasing the inner chill. The academic uncertainty nagging was the book burning a total erasure or selective purge. Debated since Han accounts exaggerated it for propaganda, the doubt weaving suspicion into every stone you set, like questioning if deleted emails truly vanish or lurk in servers waiting to resurface. Your frame weakens as quotas loom, the pain throbbing in sync with distant hammers, the shocking rot of forced unity, where diverse customs from Chu's shamanic rites to Qi's maritime trades are stamped out under standardization's boot, the sadness in lost whispers of regional tongues now forced into uniform script, empathy for the silenced as profound as the barrier's shadow engulfing you. A strange visual materializes in the haze, the wall undulating like a living spine, stones shifting subtly as if breathing accusations against the watchers above, leaving you with a mood shift toward defiant exhaustion. What iron fist can truly squeeze out diversity's whispers when they echo eternally in the cracks? The barriers rise, but paranoia's watchful eyes hint at fractures within the Empire's core. You trek Han's winding silk paths, blisters throbbing with each pulse of your weary feet against the rutted trail. But have you ever envisioned marching across 4,000 miles of treacherous trade routes in the 2nd century BCE, when Emperor Wudi's expeditions opened the Silk Road to Central Asia, exchanging Chinese treasures for exotic goods that enriched the empire yet drained its coffers dry? A network so vast it connected Rome's distant forums to Chang'an's bustling markets, making modern global supply chains seem like neighborhood deliverers, bogged down by mere traffic jams. The sun beats down mercilessly on your back, heat radiating through your threadbare tunic that clings with sweat like a second skin unwilling to peel away. the salty moisture stinging the raw flesh of your blisters where they've burst open from endless trudging, each step sending jolts of fire up your calves that make you grit your teeth. The iron tang flooding your mouth anew as you bite down hard to stifle a groan, mutating from the wall's gritty dust into this parched bitterness of dehydration, mixed with the metallic aftertaste of blood from a split lip chapped by desert winds. The air thick with the musky scent of camel dung and spice-laden packs that sway on beasts ahead, their bells tinkling discordantly like mocking laughter at your suffering, a sensory struggle where thirst claws at your throat relentlessly, your water skin nearly empty after rationing sips that do little against the relentless dry that cracks your lips further, the filth of trail dust layering your skin in a grimy film that itches unbearably under the sun's glare, amplified by the chafing of sand-filled sandals that rub raw spots into existence with every mile conquered. A physical event surges as your caravan halts abruptly at a mountain pass. Raiders from Jongnu tribes descending like shadows from the ridges, arrows hissing past your ear to thunk into a merchant's cart, forcing you to dive behind a boulder, heart pounding as you fumble for your short sword issued by Han recruiters who conscripted you from your village farm, your hands slick with sweat that makes the hilt slip, the blade glancing off an attacker's shield in a clang that reverberates through your arms, pain flaring in your wrists from the impact as you roll away from a stomping boot. The shocking element in how these northern nomads, once tributaries under earlier truces, now raid with fury fueled by Wu Di's aggressive campaigns that pushed Han borders westward. Sadder when you picture families back home awaiting silk profits that might never arrive. Their letters carried by couriers who vanish in ambushes. The pain of separation as acute as the bruise blooming on your ribs from a glancing blow. Much like migrant workers today crossing borders for promised wages, only to face exploitation and danger in foreign lands. Ironic how imperial dreams of expansion mask the rot of overextension, stretching resources thin while Confucian scholars at court preached harmony through virtue, their scrolls offering moral platitudes that ring hollow against the grind of endless marches and mounting debts from military adventures. Empathy wells up for the merchants beside you, their faces weathered from years on these paths, eyes squinting against the glare as they haggle with oasis traders for water and dates. The injustice hitting you as you realize how Wu Di's reforms establishing state monopolies on salt and iron in 119 BCE to fund wars squeezed profits from these very routes, taxing caravans until only the elite profited, the pain of economic strangulation as tangible as the blisters pulsing in your boots. Sadder when you think of porters collapsing from exhaustion, their bodies left trailside as warnings to laggards, the filth of unburied remains drawing vultures that circle overhead like omens of ambition's subtle decay. A factual moment grounds you as the skirmish ends with Han archers driving off the raiders, their crossbows refined under Wu Di's patronage, loosing bolts with mechanical precision that revolutionized ranged warfare. The era from 206 BCE onward, seeing Western Han consolidate after Liu Bang's victory over Xiang Yu, blending Qin's centralization with Confucian ethics to create a hybrid rule that expanded territory twofold through conquests into Korea and Vietnam. Yet historians still argue whether this golden age under Wu Di was true prosperity or a facade built on forced labor and fiscal strain. The uncertainty evident in census records showing population booms that masked underlying famines from overtaxation. Your tongue swells from thirst, the iron tang persisting as you chew a strip of dried meat ration, mutating further into the salty bite of perspiration that drips into your mouth, amplifying the hardship where camel hair chafes your thighs from the saddle's rough weave, the sensory struggle intensifying as mirages dance on the horizon, promising oases that vanish upon approach. The recurring wet wool now imagined as sweat-soaked scarves wrapped around your neck for meager shade clinging with a damp insistence that mocks the desert's aridity. Sarcasm curls your cracked lips, imperial dreams expand. They boast, like a balloon inflated with hot air until it pops spectacularly. The clever commentary highlighting how Wu Di's Confucian Academy in 124 BCE trained officials on classics for merit-based bureaucracy, yet masked the rot of consort family intrigues and eunuch influences that festered at court, much like universities today churning out graduates steeped in theory while ignoring the corporate corruption awaiting them. Ironic how layers of Confucian veneer preached moral governance through ritual and virtue, yet couldn't polish away the ambition that corroded Han's core from within, turning expansion's glory into a hollow shell. An absurd tidbit flickers in your heat-addled mind. The Han sometimes used flying money drafts for distant trades, paper precursors to checks that lightened loads but invited forgeries. Far quirkier than digital wallets today that promise security yet fall to hacks, yet practical in easing the burden on paths where every ounce mattered against bandits and beasts. You press on after the raid, the caravan thinned by losses, but the throb in your blisters syncs with the camel's plodding rhythm, the pain amplifying as sand works into open sores, the injustice hitting you as you spot imperial couriers galloping past with edicts from Chang'an, their silk banners fluttering untouched by the grind you endure. The pain of class divide as sharp as the rocks underfoot. Sadder when you revisit Qin Shi Huang from the Wall's labour, with a surprising twist his tyrannical unification, once a nightmare of standardization, now romanticized under Han's Confucian gloss, where Liu Bang moderated Qin's harsh laws, reducing punishments and blending merit with hereditary fiefs, the empathy for those who survived Qin's fall, mixing with grim awareness of how ambition's subtle rot persisted. Eunuchs and relatives scheming in palaces while you bleed on frontiers, zoom out poetically, and the silk paths unwind like golden threads across Asia's vast tapestry. Caravans snaking through deserts and passes under a star-strewn vault, shifting the tone from grueling trek to a broader weave where cultures entwine in trade's embrace, yet snapping back with the shocking rot beneath Wudi's endless wars against Yongnu draining treasuries, forcing monopolies that squeezed the poor, the pain of fiscal famine hidden under expansion's shine. Like economic bubbles today inflating on borrowed time, your vision swims from dehydration, the filth grinding deeper into your pores as evening falls. But sarcasm lightens the load, briefly masking rot with Confucian layers. Sure, like slathering makeup on a bruise and calling it healed, the clever commentary on how state orthodoxy elevated classics for exams yet ignored the ambition that corrupted officials. Ironic how dreams of harmony through virtue crumbled under the weight of imperial overreach, much like wellness trends promising inner peace while stressing you out with regimens. The paths wind onward, oases shimmering ahead like false hopes, but the throb persists. The pain a constant companion as rot whispers from beneath the veneer. The academic uncertainty nagging was Wudi's era, peak of Han glory or the beginning of decline, debated in light of his 54-year reign's conquests, versus the economic strains that sowed seeds for later rebellions. The doubt weaving suspicion into every traded bolt of silk. A strange visual materializes in the dusk caravan shadows elongating like ambitious fingers grasping at fading light, leaving you with a mood shift towards cynical endurance. What imperial veneer can truly mask ambition's rot when it festers unseen? Ready to erupt in turmoil's blaze, the silk paths continue. But echoes of distant wars hint at dreams expanding toward inevitable collapse. You rise in Eastern Han's turbulent uprisings, your fist clenched around a makeshift banner dyed yellow like faded saffron. But have you ever conceived how a peasant faith healer's vision in 184 CE could spark the Yellow Turban Rebellion, mobilizing hundreds of thousands in a Taoist-fueled frenzy that nearly toppled the empire, drawing on promises of cosmic renewal amid famines and floods that ravaged the populace? A mass movement so explosive it makes modern grassroots protests look like polite petitions scribbled on coffee napkins. The acrid burn of smoke from torched granaries sears your nostrils, sharp and choking as it invades your lungs with each ragged breath, the heat licking at your face like invisible flames that prickle your skin raw, mutating the Silk Road's parched dust from your endless treks into this suffocating haze laced with the bitter tang of burning thatch and rebel incense, the scent heavy with herbal resins meant to invoke spirits, but only amplifying the chaos swirling around you. Your eyes watering from the sting as you push through the throng of turbaned followers, their chants vibrating in your chest like a distant drumbeat that quickens your pulse. A sensory struggle where the filth of unwashed bodies presses against you in the crush, sweat and grime mingling into a sticky film that clings to your arms like an unwelcome embrace. The ground underfoot slick with mud churned by frantic feet, slipping treacherously and forcing you to grab a comrade's shoulder for balance, the texture squelching between your toes through worn sandals that offer no protection against the ooze. A physical event ignites as the Imperial cavalry charge thunders toward your line, horses snorting plumes of breath in the dawn mist, forcing you to dive into a ditch where brackish water soaks your robes instantly, the cold shock hitting like a slap that numbs your limbs while arrows whistle overhead to thud into the earth nearby, one grazing your calf with a hot slice that plumes immediate pain, blood welling up to mix with the muck in warm rivulets that trickle down your leg, the throbbing intensifying with each heartbeat as you scramble back to your feet, swinging a scavenged spear wildly at a mounted soldier who veers away, the impact jarring your arms like striking an unyielding wall, much like dodging rush hour traffic in a crowded city where one misstep could end everything. Ironic how this uprising, sparked by Zhang Jue's millenarian prophecies, promising equality through heavenly mandate, unraveled the fragile threads of Han unity woven since Liu Bang's founding, turning Confucian harmony into a farce of factional strife, where eunuchs and consort families schemed in Luoyang's palaces, their intrigues as poisonous as the mercury elixirs emperors swallowed for immortality. Sarcastic commentary on how the court preached moral cultivation through classics, while ignoring the rot of corruption that festered below, like wellness influencers touting mindfulness apps, while secretly battling burnout from their own hype. Empathy overwhelms you for the rebels around you, farmers driven to arms by crushing taxes and natural disasters that Emperor Ling's reign exacerbated through neglect, their faces etched with desperation from failed harvests where locusts devoured fields like biblical plagues, the shocking element in how eunuch cliques like the 10 attendants monopolized power, purging Confucian officials in bloody prescriptions that left thousands exiled or executed. Sadder when you picture scholars burying forbidden texts in garden plots to evade censors, their knowledge silenced while charlatans like Zhang Jue filled the void with talismans promising invincibility. The pain of intellectual famine as acute as the hunger gnawing at your belly from meager rebel rations of stale millet cakes that do little to fuel the fight. A factual moment steadies your grip on the spear as you regroup behind barricades of overturned carts. The Eastern Han, lasting from 25 to 220 CE under Liu Shu's restoration, after Wang Mang's brief sin interregnum saw initial revival through bureaucratic reforms emphasizing moral recommendations for officials. Yet by the late 2nd century, child emperors like Ling empowered eunuchs who amassed fortunes through corruption, leading to the Yellow Turban outbreak that ravaged provinces from Shandong to Sichuan. Yet historians still argue whether this was purely a peasant revolt or manipulated by elite factions to undermine rivals. The uncertainty evident in census drops from 50 million to mere fragments as wars and plagues decimated populations. Like piecing together a shattered mosaic where key tiles are forever lost, your calf wound pulses hotly, the iron tang persisting as you bite down on a rag to muffle your groan, mutating further into the salty bite of tears mixing with blood when you lick your lips, amplifying the hardship where thirst from the march claws at you anew, your water skin lost in the scramble, the recurring wet wool now imagined as sodden bandages hastily tied around injuries clinging with a damp insistence that chafes against raw flesh. The sensory struggle intensifying as eunuch spies rumoured among the ranks who distrust. Their whispers fracturing unity like cracks in a porcelain vase. Sarcasm curls through your pain turbans ignite chaos. They proclaim like fashion statements starting revolutions. The clever commentary highlighting how Zhang Dui's 3 brothers organised followers into military units with yellow head wraps, symbolising Earth's element rising against Han's decaying fire. Yet their millenarian dreams crumbled under imperial counteroffensives, led by generals like Huang Fusong, who exploited the rebellion to amass personal power. Ironic how Confucian veneer from Wu Di's era now peeled away to reveal the ambitions rot. Eunuchs like Zhao Zhong manipulating puppet emperors while the realm burned, much like boardroom coups today where executives oust CEOs amid company crises, profiting from the fallout with golden parachutes. An absurd tidbit flickers in your feverish thoughts amid the clash the rebels sometimes use bee stings as improvised weapons, hurling hives at advancing troops to sow panic, far wilder than pepper spray in modern riots, yet effective in disrupting formations. A tactic born of desperation that stung both literally and figuratively. You charge forward again as the line reforms, the mud sucking at your boots with reluctant slurps. But the throb in your legs spikes as you vault a fallen comrade, the pain lancing upward like lightning, the injustice hitting you as you spot imperial banners fluttering with hypocritical Confucian slogans of benevolence, while eunuch corruption back in Luoyang hoards grain that could feed these starving hordes. The pain of hypocrisy as sharp as the spear tip grazing your arm anew, sadder when you revisit Emperor Wu Di from the Silk Road expansions with a surprising twist his Confucian Academy, once a beacon of meritocratic learning, now corrupted into a tool for factional purges where scholars like Kai Yong faced exile for criticizing eunuchs. The empathy for silenced voices mixing with rage at how fragile threads of unity unraveled under such intrigue. Turning Han's golden age into a tapestry frayed beyond repair, zoom out poetically, and the uprising spreads like wildfire across the Yellow River basin, yellow turbans waving in rhythmic fury under a storm-laden sky, shifting the tone from personal fray to a broader conflagration, where societal rot consumes the realm, yet snapping back with the shocking chaos where warlords rise from the ashes, generals like Dong Zhuo exploiting the turmoil to seize power. The pain of power vacuums as tangible as the wound festering on your calf, the filth grinding deeper into it with every step. Your vision swims from blood loss, the acrid burn persisting as flames lick closer from a nearby village set ablaze, amplifying the hardship where thirst and fatigue conspire to weaken your resolve, the sensory struggle intensifying as chants of "The azure heaven is dead, the yellow heaven shall stand," ring hollow against imperial reinforcements massing on the horizon. A clever commentary arises amid the din unravelling fragile threads in flames of discontent, symbolic of an empire where Confucian ideals burned brightest, yet ignited their own pyre. Sarcastic how we idolize Han's longevity, while ignoring the eunuch cancers that metastasized within, much like praising a long marriage that ends in bitter divorce after years of ignored red flags. The turbans surge forward once more, but defeat looms in the smoke, the strange visual of yellow fabric charring black in the fires, twisting like dying serpents against the dusk, leaving you with a mood shift toward resigned fury, what fragile unity can survive when intrigue's burn sears through every thread. Ready to consume the realm in total collapse, the uprisings rage on, but echoes of falling banners hint at warlords waiting in the wings. You sift through empire's lingering ashes, your fingers trailing through the powdery remnants that coat your skin like a shroud of silent screams. But have you ever truly felt the weight of a 400-year fracture after Han's collapse in 220 CE, when warlords like Cao Cao turned poetry into propaganda and slaughter into strategy, splintering China into Wei, Shu, and Wu kingdoms, whose endless clashes inspired the romance of the Three Kingdoms, a tale so mythic it outlives the blood it romanticizes, much like how modern war epics glorify generals while bearing the grunts in footnotes. The ashes cling to your palms, fine and gritty, itching faintly as they work into your pores with a dry insistence that mutates the turbulent uprising's acrid burn into this quiet, suffocating veil. The air heavy with the musty scent of decayed timber from long-fallen palaces, your throat tightening as you inhale the residue of forgotten fires. A sensory struggle where the faint, earthy tang settles on your tongue like bitter regret, amplified by the overgrown vines snaking through cracked stones that brush your ankles like spectral tendrils reluctant to release their hold. A physical event stirs as you unearth a rusted bronze fragment, its edge nicking your fingertip with a sharp pinch that draws a warm bead of blood, pain flaring briefly like a dying ember's spark, the wound throbbing in sync with your heartbeat as you examine the relic once a Han ritual vessel now corroded beyond use, much like scrolling through faded social media posts from a bygone era, where connections rusted into irrelevance. Ironic how enduring lessons emerge from such quiet discomfort. The mandate of heaven cycling through rise and fall like a cosmic joke, where virtue's promise crumbles under ambition's unyielding grasp. Sarcastic commentary on how Cao Cao's ruthless meritocracy united the North yet painted him as villain in folklore, while Liu Bei's virtuous facade masked Shu's fragile alliances, and Sun Quan's Wu clung to southern rivers like a drowning man to driftwood. Their triangular deadlock a farce of unity that devoured millions in battles like Red Cliffs, where fireships turned the Yangtze into an inferno of screaming hulls. Empathy wells up for the peasants caught in this web, their fields trampled by armies of hundreds of thousands, families shattered by conscription that turned brothers into enemies, The shocking element in how unique intrigues from Hand's End birthed these kingdoms, sadder when you picture refugees fleeing scorched earth, their ancestral tablets clutched like fading hopes, the pain of displacement as acute as the nick on your finger. Historians still arguing whether the Three Kingdoms era spurred innovation through competition, or merely prolonged suffering before Sui's reunification in 589 CE. The uncertainty weaving doubt into every ash-stirred memory, like debating if division breeds strength or just deeper scars. Your skin tingles from the powder's touch, the psychological chill deepening as echoes of struggles fade, leaving a strange visual of ashes coalescing into spectral warriors that dissolve in the breeze. What lessons endure when history's grasp crushes dreams into dust? The lingering dust settles, but faint whispers hint at cycles renewing. As the ashes of ancient empires finally settle in your thoughts, you feel the quiet discomfort easing, like a heavy fog lifting from your mind in the soft hush of twilight, the gritty residue on your fingers fading with each slow breath you take, the distant echoes of clashes and betrayals growing fainter as gentler winds carry them away. Your body relaxes now, muscles unwinding from the tensions of treks and turmoil, the throbbing wounds and parched thirst dissolving into a peaceful stillness where history's unyielding grasp loosens its hold, allowing lessons of resilience to linger softly like whispers on a calm night. Breathe deeply, letting the overgrown vines and cracked stones recede into shadow, the metallic tang and acrid smoke drifting off like forgotten dreams, until only the rhythm of your heartbeat remains, steady and serene in the enveloping quiet. Sleep comes gently now, with the assurance that from dust rises renewal, fading into restful oblivion. The world quiets and you drift away,